if you live in the UK, especially in a rural area, and I live in sort of a very sort of semi-rural area, so to say the least. But if you talk to farmers or people who sort of work in that industry, they have some very, very not only graphic memories, but some very, very catastrophic stories, not only of just the swine flu outbreak. I mean, that was what the sort of late noughties, sort of when that happened. What was that? 2007, something like that. When it happened, I believe. And of course, you've got to go all the way back even more to the mad cow disease outbreak that happened here. That again, the industry, that part of the farming industry is still very, very much still recovering from that. Almost 20 years on, it is still having to recover from that. We've also got, the swine flu, and I wouldn't be surprised to hear from like a pig farmer to say, yeah, actually, we're still trying to recover from that disaster as well. Because when something like these diseases come through, you only have to go back, and the images are still there on like BBC, in national newspapers. You see of like the big piles of pigs having to be burned, and that's not recently. Well, of course, with the shortage of abattoir workers, that's being brought about by. That was a few years ago because of the swine flu outbreak, and it was very, very similar scenes as well for, of course, the mad cow disease outbreak that happened as well. So the very fact that now, potentially, because of how the UK government is acting, that we could maybe see these scenes get repeated again. And I encourage you, if you know anyone who works in or around that industry, just ask them themselves. They have some very, very graphic imagery that they can remember or even recall from those times, because it was such a devastating time for many people working in that industry. So, but just before we go on into this story, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help support the channel that way. So, this comes from The Guardian with the title of "The Swine Fever Risk in if UK Waivers Checks on Imports from the EU, Says Vets." Just if you haven't heard, the government ministers are once again considering waiving EU checks for a fourth time. It's almost like they're not prepared. So, the government plans to waive border checks on goods from the EU, including food and livestock, and that will put the country at risk from importing devastating infectious diseases such as African swine flu and compound the very serious damage to UK trade caused by Brexit. The double warning has been issued by both the British Veterinary Association as ministers consider yet another postponement to post-Brexit inspections, because the fears that checks will slow down the supply chains and add to bureaucracy and increase prices at the shops at a time when UK consumers are already facing a cost of living crisis. They cannot keep on putting this off. Time and time again. I thought we were ready. I thought we were ready for this. I thought we were ready to go and cracking. But again, as you know, we followed this. We ain't ready at all. There isn't the infrastructure. There isn't the manpower. Companies don't have the specialty capabilities, the time to be able to fill out most of this paperwork. Just recently, we've had now 2 big queues at Dover going on now for the past 2 days. I don't know if it'll be still going on when this video going out, because of ferry delays caused by the P&O disaster. Again, a delay that we have said time and time again would be very catastrophic for our supply chains. And guess what? It's having catastrophic effects on our supply chains. Who would have guessed? And of course, the already much delayed rules, including a requirement for obviously the veterinary certificates and potential spot checks after arrival, were due to be phased in from the 1st of July. Though the tough new rules on imports were initially hailed by the Brexiteers as examples of how leaving the EU would allow the UK to, quote, take back control of its borders, but now, amid growing evidence that Brexit is harming trade, senior figures in government, led by the Minister for Brexit Opportunities, Jacob Rees-Mogg, have now changed track to decide that less control rather than more control is needed over imports in order to speed the flow of goods and reduce costs. You can't make this up. You literally cannot make that up. But there you are. Here it is in black and white. Rather than more control, we need less control to speed up all the flow of goods. What a cracking idea. What a Brexit opportunity that is, Mr. Rees-Mogg. But, of course, the relaxation of animal safety standards is worrying both UK vets and many in the farming community. James Russell, the senior vice president of the BFA, told The Observer he would be raising the alarm that when he gives evidence this month to MPs on the International Trade Select Committee. Russell has said that dropping checks would not only endanger animal health, but have serious consequences for the UK's biosecurity and also compromise the UK's reputation for high standards on animal food and safety, which in turn could damage trust overseas that businesses in the UK have produced. He said, if these controls are dropped, there is a potential risk of an incursion of African swine fever, which, spreading rapidly, has already had a catastrophic impact on animal health and the agricultural industry in parts of Europe, Asia, and Africa. Official veterinarians working at the border act as the country's first line of defense for biosecurity, and we feel it would be deeply misguided to push back these much needed but vital checks even further, and in doing so, weaken this layer of protection for both animal and public health. So expect, maybe in like a couple of months' time, expect us going over of the fact that we've got a swine flu outbreak here in the UK, and it is destroying the the pig industry here in the UK. Expect that to be covering that very soon. In fact, put a phone call in because it's probably going to happen pretty soon. And again, according to the World Association for Animal Health, African swine fever is responsible for massive losses in pig production and drastic economic consequences, and has become a major crisis for the pork industry in recent years, currently affecting several regions around the world with no effective vaccine. The disease is not only impeding animal health and welfare, but it also has detrimental impacts on the biodiversity and the livelihoods of farmers. Russell added that if the food substances were imported into the UK with no records of their origins, then when included in a hybrid product such as pizza, that would become even more difficult to export into markets such as the EU, where the full details of products and origins are needed. Of course, a further delay is, however, sure to be welcomed by many UK businesses, which are already struggling with the food supply chain issues made worse by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. James Withers, the chief executive of Scotland Food and Drink, told the Financial Times last week the decision to delay checks again would, however, infuriate UK exporters who have had to deal with mountains of paperwork and extra costs since the UK left the single market on the 1st of January last year. He said, there is no doubt this will stick in the throat of a lot of exporters who are now 15 months into trying to navigate a tsunami of paperwork that our EU competitors are not facing. Ministers, of course, are very conscious that the UK trade performance failed to recover from the pandemic nearly as fast as other leading economies, according to the recent data, with many blaming Brexit, and the Office of Budget Responsibility has stuck to its prediction that leaving the EU would result in a total of UK exports being 15% lower than it would have we'd stayed inside the bloc. And of course, last week, Chancellor Rishi Sunak told the Treasury Select Committee that the UK's poor trade performance compared with other G7 countries might well be due to Brexit. So, oh, shock horror. Oh, shock horror. Tell me this wasn't what we've been predicting for so long. How could we have not seen this coming? Who was not telling us this disaster was going to occur? Oh, that's right, us from the very beginning. Oh, dear me. Back in 2016. And now, if we get swine flu, considering how bad the pork industry is doing during this time, because of, again, of the lack of workers in abattoirs, meaning that there's been a massive pileup in pigs, which they basically had to slaughter in the tens of thousands. It's going to be an absolute disaster for them. Not a disaster, it will be a catastrophe, the likes of which the UK farming industry has not seen probably since the days of the mad cow disease, when that was causing an absolute disaster to many farms across the UK. So, as I said before, expect us to be covering that in the near future. It would not surprise me at all, in the least, what is about to happen on this front. But there you go. Yeah. What can we say about this? Is what we've been warning about constantly since the very beginning. And now it seems to be only sinking in. And remember, they've got no answers to these questions. Because when these questions were originally asked, it was, oh, it's Project Fear. That will just never happen. But now when they happen, where are their supposed answers to these questions? Because as we've said all along, it was ideologically driven and it was built on a house of cards that cannot stand. And when reality comes knocking, reality will come knocking hard and fast. And it will knock over that house of cards faster than anything we've ever seen before. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.